Warning: do not watch this alone. Zvíkov Castle is not haunted in the way you think. There are no screaming apparitions, no dragging chains, no shadows lunging from the walls. What makes it dangerous is quieter. Visitors don't see something chasing them. They feel something leaving them. Strength, focus, time, memory. This documentary contains accounts that were dismissed, buried, or deliberately ignored. Some witnesses refused to continue after recalling what happened inside the tower. Others never returned. You have been warned. Even the stones seem to whisper here. Even the wind seems to hesitate before reaching the tower. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a nightmare. Zvíkov Castle sits at the confluence of the Vltava and Otava rivers in the Czech Republic. Constructed in the 13th century, it was admired for its architecture, its strategic location, and its profound isolation, a fortress of both beauty and secrets. For centuries, nobles, soldiers, and caretakers lived within its walls, but the upper tower was always avoided. Historical letters, recovered from regional archives, reveal guards refusing night duty, citing a deep sense of unease. One letter from the 1600s recounts a soldier collapsing mid-patrol, claiming the air inside the tower felt heavy, thick, and hungry. Another archive mentions the castle cook, who would leave meals at the tower door, but never, ever, step inside. By the early 1900s, caretakers began reporting severe headaches, nausea, and a sudden, bone-deep exhaustion. There were no injuries, no signs of poison, only a rapid, inexplicable decline in health. Then, in 1947, the castle was confiscated by the state. The last permanent residents departed quietly. Public records offer no explanation for their swift departure. Some local stories suggest the windows of the tower were boarded up for months, yet others claim the doors were simply left unlocked, as if the tower itself demanded solitude. Locals insist the tower doesn't house a ghost. It houses a presence without form, something ancient, something that does not move, something that feeds when you enter its space. Accounts from those who have dared to enter describe a consistent pattern of symptoms: a sudden disorienting dizziness, an extreme and overpowering fatigue, heart palpitations that pound against your ribs, and a strange building pressure behind the eyes. Most chillingly, visitors report the feeling of being watched, not from a dark corner, but from inside their own body. Some have tried to explain this away with science, suggesting a geomagnetic anomaly. But investigators who came to test this theory reported their own strange phenomena: equipment malfunctioning without cause, fully charged batteries draining in an instant, and compasses spinning wildly, unable to find north. Tourists today still report these same unnerving occurrences. Phones shut off at full charge. Cameras die the moment you try to take a picture. Watches stop, freezing time. Some visitors describe a sense of missing time, of minutes, or even hours, unaccounted for. Others find they cannot recall the events that took place inside the tower once they leave, as if the memory itself was consumed. Among the castle's dark legends, one story stands out: the forbidden testimony of a caretaker from 1938. On a stormy night, he allegedly decided to sleep inside the tower. A journal entry, recovered years later, describes what happened next. He woke up, paralyzed, unable to move, feeling something pulling the warmth directly from his chest. His words were, "It didn't touch me. It drank me." The journal ends right there, mid-sentence. The caretaker resigned only days later and refused to speak of the castle ever again. He died within the year. His death certificate listed no official cause. Other accounts whisper of similar experiences. A different caretaker heard screaming for hours, claiming he felt the crushing weight of every person who had ever entered the tower before him. A more recent visitor described hearing distinct footsteps right behind him, only to turn and find he was completely alone. Even today, a brief visit to the tower is said to drain your strength, dim your vision, and leave an unsettling gap in your memory. Have you ever heard of a place that doesn't just have ghosts, but feeds on the living? Forget rattling chains and spooky apparitions. Today, We're going to Zvíkov Castle in the Czech Republic, home to a tower with a reputation so dark, even locals whisper its name with caution. They call it the Haunted Tower, or sometimes the Crown Jewel Tower. But what truly haunts it isn't a ghost. It's something far more sinister. The legends surrounding Zvíkov Castle are as old as its stones. Built in the 13th century, it was a royal fortress, a place of power and prestige. But one of its towers, the Markomanka Tower, is wrapped in stories that have nothing to do with kings or queens. The builders themselves were said to be plagued by supernatural events. Strange voices echoed from the empty stone structure, tools vanished without a trace, and terrifying figures appeared in the dead of night. Desperate, they reportedly carved strange symbols into the stones, hoping to pacify whatever lurked within. For a time, it seemed to work, but the quiet didn't last. By the 16th century, the tower had become a place of dread. Rumors of a mischievous, even malevolent, spirit known as Aurora Ek began to circulate. People claimed it would extinguish fires with no explanation, play tricks on guards, and some even reported seeing their own apparitions within its walls. One story tells of workers who tried to spend the night inside the tower on a dare. They fled before midnight, pale and terrified, swearing they would never return, even for a royal reward. The tower was eventually sealed, left to its silence and its secrets. But you can't seal a hunger that never dies. In modern times, the tower was reopened to the public. The ancient stories were dismissed as folklore, charming tales for tourists. That is, until the visitors started experiencing it for themselves. The internet is filled with chilling first-hand accounts, TripAdvisor reviews, travel blogs, forum posts. They all tell a similar, unnerving story. People walk into the tower feeling perfectly fine, only to be overcome by a sudden, crippling weakness. One tourist wrote that they collapsed on the stairs, their legs refusing to move, as if a switch had been flipped. Another visitor mentioned entering the tower alone and emerging with a gap in their memory, losing hours with no explanation. It's not just tourists. Paranormal investigators, armed with equipment and skepticism, have been humbled by this place. One team reported that after their investigation, every member felt an emotional hollowness that lingered for days, a profound emptiness they couldn't shake. The tower seemed to have drained them of more than just physical energy. There's a fictionalized account that perfectly captures this dread. It describes a photographer who lingered inside just a little too long, trying to get the perfect shot. When he finally walked out, he was pale, shaking uncontrollably. He couldn't remember his own name for several minutes. His friends rushed him to a doctor, who ran every test imaginable. The results: he was perfectly healthy. There was nothing physically wrong with him. This is the tower's signature. It leaves no mark, no physical evidence. But the effects are undeniable. Even a short visit can leave you feeling disoriented, mentally exhausted, with a creeping sense of emptiness that follows you for hours, sometimes even days. It's as if a part of you was left behind in the cold, silent stone. What could possibly cause this? It's not a haunting in the traditional sense. It's something else. Something that feeds. This leads us to a more terrifying, suppressed theory. It's not a theory you'll find in the official guidebooks. This theory suggests the tower isn't haunted by the dead. It's an active, predatory environment. It functions as a kind of psychic vacuum, a spiritual siphon. It doesn't want your fear. It wants your life force, your biological energy, your emotional intensity, your very thoughts and memories. It's not trying to kill you, but to preserve itself. Some who have studied the tower believe the presence inside isn't a ghost of someone who died, but a consciousness that is unfinished, trapped between states of being. To remain aware, to stay awake, it needs to feed on the energy of the living. Others point to the castle's medieval history, suggesting dark rituals were performed here, but not to summon spirits. The rituals were meant to bind something that was already present, to contain a pre-existing entity within the tower's walls, turning the structure into a cage and a feeding trough. Think about that for a moment. The castle doesn't attract ghosts. It consumes the living. Every person who walks in is a meal. Your focus, your excitement, your vitality, it's all on the menu. The tower patiently waits, drawing it all in, one visitor at a time. It's a slow, silent harvest. The people who live near the castle, the locals who grew up with its shadow looming over them, know the truth. They don't talk about it openly with outsiders, but they follow a strict, unspoken set of rules passed down through generations. First, never, ever stay in the tower alone. Whatever is in there is more powerful, more focused, when it has only one target. Second, never linger too long. Get in, see what you need to see, and get out. The longer you stay, the more it takes. And third, never return twice in a single day. Visiting once is like offering a snack. Visiting twice is like offering yourself. And what happens to those who break the rules? The stories are consistent. The symptoms escalate. It starts with insomnia, the inability to find rest. Then comes the paranoia, the feeling of being watched, even when you're miles away from the castle. Finally, there are the dreams. Recurring nightmares of standing inside the tower, feeling the cold stone around you, but with a horrifying twist. You're not alone in your own body. Something is standing inside you, looking out through your eyes. There's a chilling story about a small, independent investigation team who ignored the warnings. They set up their gear, determined to capture definitive proof. They left a final, garbled audio message before abandoning all of their expensive equipment and fleeing into the night. The recording, which has become something of an urban legend itself, is mostly static. But in the final moments, you can allegedly hear breathing. It's deep and slow, but it doesn't match the rhythm of any human being. It's the sound of something ancient and patient. You might be wondering, why hasn't the tower been exorcised? Why hasn't a priest or a medium cleansed the place? Because, according to the theory, there is nothing to remove. An exorcism is for a spirit that doesn't belong. But what if this entity is part of the very fabric of the place? What if it's as much a part of the tower as the stones themselves? You can't exorcise a building. You can't cast out the foundation. So, here is the final warning. Zvíkov Castle remains open to tourists. The tower still stands, silent and patient. It doesn't need to chase you. It doesn't need to scream or rattle chains. It just waits. It knows you will come. So if you ever decide to visit, pay close attention. If you suddenly feel tired, an exhaustion that makes no sense, leave. If your phone or camera battery suddenly dies, even though it was fully charged, leave. If you find your thoughts becoming scattered, fuzzy, thinner, get out immediately. Don't rationalize it. Don't try to be brave. Just leave. Because some places don't want to be haunted. They want to be fed. Thanks for joining us in the dark. If you enjoyed this story and want to uncover more places that will give you nightmares, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We're always waiting for you.